What is up, tribe? It is Hustle and Thrive. I'm Shea Perkins, and I'm joined by
Julian Frazier.
Awesome. Today, the topic we are talking about, man, the second one's always so good. Anyways, today we are talking about, Julian, what are we talking about?
Man, you know what? We are taking it a step or two back. And we're saying, what if you are amongst the majority of folks who have had a hard time, you've fallen off the wagon, so to speak, and you're building yourself back up through fitness, through nutrition, through healthy work, whatever it is. How do you get back going, especially when it feels like that you've relapsed into some sort of sedentary behavior or bad eating habits? You said you're going to take the weekend off. The weekend turned into a week. The week turned into a month. And before you know it, your fitness goals are out the window. How do you get back on that wagon?
Yeah. A lot of time there's a lot of emotional baggage that comes with it. You associate yourself with one thing that you do very consistently.
Right.
You fall off, and then you're ashamed. Like you're like, I cannot believe I did that.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to jump back in because
difficult.
you jump back in with just like really aggressively, and then you fall off again, or you just don't know where to start. And after so many times, you just give up, and
Right.
it's a real place to be. And we just want to talk about how to get back.
Yeah, so if that sounds like you, this topic is for you. This podcast is for you, hopefully to give you some pointers, some tips, some ideas to get you moving in the right direction. If this does not sound like you, know that somebody in your network, your families, your friends, your teammates might go through something like this, or you might go through something like this in the future, and you would probably like to be prepared, at least with a little bit of mindset going forward of how to handle these situations, because they're not easy, they're tough.
They're not. So let's give maybe a working example. What is maybe an example of falling off that we can kind of pick apart and work with?
Falling off. Okay, there's probably a lot of examples. I am thinking of the individual who was an athlete from day one, was in one sport or another through middle school or high school or all the way through college, and then they quote unquote retire from their career as an athlete, and maybe they do it for fun, but they don't have that structure anymore. So they fall off the wagon, so to speak, because all of their health and fitness was tied to their sport, but now they don't have that sport anymore. And now they find themselves in a place where they don't know what it's like to work out for themselves, or don't know what it's like to work out without structure or a coach kind of guiding them through. So that's one example. What was another one maybe you were thinking about, Shay?
That's actually really awesome. I was just thinking kind of in general, somebody who's been going to the gym, doing really well, take a couple weeks off, all of a sudden it's not even a thing anymore.
Right.
But I kind of like that. That's a very real example you gave there. People, they are always kind of coached, and their fitness and their health and their sport is kind of given to them. But then you become an adult, and it's like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I've personally seen it in the gymnastics world a lot. Gymnastics, if you're not going, like if you finish high school and you're not going to college, you don't do it anymore. Like if you're not competitive, you're not really useful anymore.
You're just done.
Yeah, so a lot of ex-gymnasts definitely struggle with that. They want to keep up with it, but it hurts, and they want to do it because their friends do it, but like it's awkward because they're not competing anymore.
Yeah.
And you see kind of a cycle of like they jump back into it, get hurt, get frustrated, don't do it for a long time, jump back in, get hurt, and it's a painful cycle to watch happen.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. And whether you're an athlete or not, whether you're one of the persons again that have had a good routine in the gym, that you've been doing things regularly, and then for whatever reason or not, you got thrown off of those habits and patterns, and accidentally made some bad habits and patterns that just happened to last for a long time, and stop going to the gym or whatever. It's important to remember that is not an uncommon thing to happen. It's not the ideal thing to happen, but that you're not alone. I think you mentioned gymnasts, but just in general, like that depression that hits when you kind of lose track of that part of yourself for like temporarily or indefinitely is very real. Like it's a documented thing.
Yeah. So would you say maybe the first kind of step is beginning to separate your identity from the thing you are or not doing anymore? Like gymnasts might need to step off and say like, look, it's not very healthy for me to identify this closely with gymnastics, so I need to maybe start separating myself so I can approach this process a little more mindfully.
Yeah. And I think it's less saying that like, okay, you don't have to completely separate your identity from what you do. It's saying like, what quality am I right now, and being really honest and realistic about that. So you were mentioning how we tried to like jump into something really fast. So let's say we haven't been in the gym for 6 months, and then the first day back we try to hit our 1 rep max of everything. Right?
Bad idea. Very bad idea.
Right. And we would almost call those like they're like a false start.
Yeah.
Right. So we jump back into something to try to be at the same level that we left it at, but we have to kind of reassess and recognize, maybe we should need to take a few steps back, recognize and kind of accept where we are now. So I can still be a gymnast in your example, but what quality am I right now, and how do I build back up to it? I think that's the hard part.
Yeah, that is for sure. I would say a more more detailed position I just spoke on would be that you need to have an accurate representation of where you are at the moment and not where you have been in the past, where you might kind of be tying your identity to. So that might look like, instead of going to the gym and hitting a 1 rep max, you might want to do some lighter weight sets to kind of just get your technique back and get your body used to it, because that stimulus will be so novel and so extreme. You're not going to walk for a couple of days.
Yeah. Oh man, that's like the leg day curse, right?
Leg day. Oh my goodness.
That you go in and you hit leg day hard, and then you can't walk for 2 or 3 days, and like just the memory of the trauma of not being able to walk up and down stairs.
The trauma.
You're like, yeah, it's like almost traumatic. I know, man, I have to do leg day today, but I don't want to be super dumb sore.
Man.
Not knowing that it 1 or 2 leg days in, that soreness will kind of wane and your body will adapt to it. But absolutely, those are like another false start scenario where we hit it too hard and our body hasn't had a chance to acclimate to it again.
I had this kid that back in high school, when me and my friends would train parkour, we were kind of like at the track running sprints, and this guy kind of walked up, and he was I think he said he was ex-football player. He was maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years out. He'd gained some weight, but he's like, yo, let me jump in on these sprints. And I was like, sure, man. And he was super pumped. And we were doing a stupid number. It was like we were doing 20 sprints at like 30 meters. It was way too much anyways. But anyways, he jumps in. And after like 5 or 6, he's like, oh, I'm not feeling so good. And then he like throws up. And then he like keeps going. And then he like gets the most horrible Charlie horse in the back of his leg. And he's like screaming on the ground because his calf or because his hamstring is cramping. And it was a bad time.
It wasn't good. Enough that you remembered it.
I remembered it.
Point.
Yeah, it was good.
So let's say someone in our audience is listening to us right now. What would maybe be a good, reasonable first step if we've been sedentary for a while, or if we've been busy with other things, or we either fell off the wagon or were never on it in the first place? What's the first step? What's the first action to take?
So for me, I try to educate myself on kind of what like a foundation would be, or what some really basic markers would be for not just fitness, but for everything. Like, so a human should be able to do like X, Y, and Z. And let's say, that might get even as basic as like walking, and like, did you drink a couple glasses of water today? And sometimes we might want to like go to the gym and be like, yo, I need to hit curls. I need to work on my glutes. I need to do this.
Right.
I need to I need to be eating this like crazy weird superfood that's on the market now.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like the fundamentals, like start so simple, like drink some water, go on a walk.
Right.
Can you touch your toes today?
Yeah.
Really basic stuff like that. And it's hard because you want to jump into the fun stuff, but sometimes you just got to get back to the fundamentals and rebuild that foundation up real slowly over time.
Absolutely. And you're right. That's the hardest part, especially if you have some experience with it in the past, is starting simple, starting basic, and building up to it. Because if you've done it in the past, those basic steps, they'll go by quickly. Right, but
they will, yeah.
But I think even for folks who maybe have never been on the wagon in the first place, those basics also give us some small wins.
For sure,
right?
Yeah.
They give us like something that's achievable, attainable, goals that are reasonable. That after we have a few successes in the bank, it's not too hard to motivate ourselves to get back up, because now we have some momentum. But again, a lot of folks who try to go too hard too quick. They overstep their goals. They overstep what's reasonable, realistic, and end up false starting.
Yeah, definitely, like, if I'm thinking of like the image I have in my head is like middle-aged dad, middle-aged mom, and they're like, it's time to get healthy, and they go to the gym 6 days a week for 3 hours at a time.
Oh wow, yeah.
That's not the answer.
Right.
You're gonna lose weight if you just like maybe have a salad at lunch, or you like take the stairs a couple times a day instead of like taking the elevator. Like,
Right.
those basics are going to give you huge returns in the beginning, so take advantage of them.
Yeah.
And don't get too ahead of yourself. You don't need to do 10 by 10 on squats, and you don't need to like suddenly hire 4 personal trainers to get you to have these crazy
Right.
workouts done.
Absolutely. And I mean, that example, like having a salad for lunch, right? It's not super complex. It's not super, deep and like goes into all the science of it, right? I would beg to say that the majority of people, in terms of like basic understanding, they know what they need to be doing.
Probably, yeah.
At a very basic level. Eat more fruits and veggies. Like, oh my god, right? Eat less processed crap and less sugar. Like that. Those are things that people know, and it's activating those basic things. But people oftentimes get overwhelmed because they're saying, okay, I know these basic things that I know I should do. What else should I know? Like what is the special thing that's gonna do the trick? And it's like, no, start basic, and that you'll build off of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's funny is, even as like someone who is consistently like going to the gym or has these awesome habits, that like sometimes like coming back to the basics is still important. Like, say you're a seasoned gym athlete, or you do a sport, but you're not doing something basic like getting 7 hours of sleep at night. Like, forget the complicated workout program you're looking at on
Right.
T Nation or like Men's Fitness. Like, you just need to like sleep an extra hour. Like, you'll get more returns from that than you would from doing something crazy and specialized. So for me, like, and this is just like something I really preach and believe in, it's like always come back to the foundation, always come back to the basics, always start from something strong and foundational before you start getting like complicated.
Always come back to home base. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering. You gave the example of like the couple, the middle-aged mom or dad that like starts off like super hard 6 days a week. What about the other extreme where we took a week off, 2 weeks, a month off, but all that time got filled with other things, other obligations, and that's why we never got back to the gym, because the time that was once gym just got filled with a part-time job, or got filled with other things that we found important or that we needed to address. So we just never got back to the gym because that time was accounted for.
Right.
What would you tell someone? I mean, just from your perspective too, what to do when getting back into the gym is itself a struggle in terms of time.
That's funny, because to me it almost doesn't relate, because I'm so obsessive. It's probably way too obsessive with what I do that I will prioritize it over everything else. But I guess fundamentally that's kind of what's going on. You need to get back to the basics, prioritize what really is important. I mean, maybe you could, instead of having the 1 hour lunch with your friend every day at lunch, maybe you could go on a quick walk. I think it really comes down to, you got to prioritize it if you want to make it work. And what were you going to say? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm there with you. There's a part of it that like, it may not be your fault that you fell off the wagon, or it may not even be your fault that you were never on the wagon in the first place, because not all of us were raised in athletic families, or raised in areas where certain like superfoods were on the menu, or
Superfood.
or with our parents cooked a vegan diet. There's all these things that privileges that we may not have had. So it may not even be your fault, but it is most definitely your responsibility.
Sure.
So I'm not going to say that it's anyone to blame, and also it's now your time to deal with it. So from the personal training perspective, like, I can't train someone that doesn't show up to the gym. A nutritionist, like, if you don't eat the foods the nutritionist or registered dietitian tell you to eat, like, there's no. So you have to find that thing that makes it priority. Like, you have to really sit down and hash out, what are my values? What are the things that are important to me? More than just like, I know that I should make it a priority for my health. Like, what is the purpose? What is the real why behind this? What is it going to do for you? And what has it done for you in the past? If it's never done anything for you in the past, because that's never been a part of your lifestyle, what could you chance to learn about yourself or about the experience, right? It's really anchoring these things into deeper beliefs and values than just, I know that I have to do this because the FDA recommended
Yeah.
or the CDC's recommendation was this, that, or the other, that I should have so many servings of kale. Like I don't care about those things. What I want to know is, what is your why? What's your purpose? And if you have a strong enough purpose, we will find time for you to start getting back on the wagon, so to speak. What is this wagon? I'm so stuck on this wagon. Oh man, okay, sorry.
The wagon.
The wagon.
Funny. Okay, so we always kind of relate things back to like fitness in a traditional sense, but again, the podcast is more fitness in a broad sense.
Right.
It's being in the strongest version of yourself across all sides.
Yeah, that's true.
So what if somebody is falling off the wagon in the sense of they are like going back to a relationship that's not good for them, or they have an addiction they keep falling into? Like, how should they treat themselves? Like, do they deserve respect to still look at themselves in the eye and say like, look, you can do this, you can get better, or should they give up? Like, what do we do?
Whew, that's so tough. First of all, I feel as though anyone deserves respect. I don't care who you are, where you're at. Everyone has value. Nobody's value is zero, right? Even if it's 0.01.
It's still not zero.
It's still not zero. There's still something to build off of. But when we are in those places, those states, when we're driven by passions, you mentioned relationships, and it feels like human beings, especially now, will make any exception in the world for the sake of a relationship.
Yeah, for
right.
sure.
It's very difficult to look up those things objectively, and very difficult to, especially if you're heartbroken or you're mourning or something like that. It's very difficult to find the value and respect in yourself. So I want to say that absolutely that a person is still of value if they're going through those things. Sometimes it's just hard to see. I'm not sure that I completely answered your question. What was the other part of it?
I mean, you generally touched on like a working definition of it, but I was thinking just like, what if you find yourself in the place where you keep going back to the guy, you keep going back to the girl, you keep going back to, say you have a drug habit or this whatever habit.
Keep going back to the terrible job.
The terrible job. I quit, guys. Don't worry. I quit my job. But anyways, like, and you don't even want to talk about it. You don't want to tell your friends you're back with it, or you don't want to, you hide the fact that you're smoking cigarettes again, or whatever it is. You're just like, you're so ashamed. You're not facing others, and you're not facing yourself. Like, how do we come out of that like hole and start getting back on top and just having forgiveness for ourselves and having respect for ourselves to be like, look, I know this is the 100th time, but this time is going to be the time that I work.
Yeah, and I want to take a step back too and say that, I mean, that's that pattern of relapse that we see in anything that can be addictive. And I mean, love and all the associated feelings and hormones definitely can be addictive. I mean, people can be addicted to work, people can be addicted to fitness even, and relationships and, drugs and substances. So we see that people will go in these patterns of relapse all the time. And while it's not ideal, again, it is in some ways normal and expected. What is really important to not do is to isolate yourself in those experiences. So even if we feel a little embarrassed, a little bit of shame around getting back with that ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend who was a little abusive, or the relationship was a little toxic, or using cigarettes when we know that we had committed to quit. Those that can come with guilt and shame and embarrassment and things that we don't want to share with other people. But by isolating ourselves, we protect those feelings. It's making sure that in one way or another we have a support system of folks who can be like, you know what, I'm bringing the wagon back. I fell off the wagon. I had a cigarette. I fell off the wagon and I had that second scoop of ice cream or whatever. How can you help me through this? And you'll find is that people are usually supportive. They're usually empathetic. They usually understand. They've probably gone through something like that themselves.
Yeah.
So in a lot of those cases, support is really important. And in fitness and those things, I mean, the support can come in the form of a personal trainer. It can come in the form of a coach. But more often than not, it's going to be your own social network, the people of value in your own life that you've always relied on. That if you have those those inclinations to isolate yourself in those experiences, do the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? Talk to someone, get it off your chest and out into the world, and you'll find that you might actually feel better when you're not the only one holding that burden.
Yeah. That's support system is so ridiculously important. And not that I've really dealt with any like major addictions or major falling offs, this, that, or the other, but I've dealt with my fair share. They've been really frustrating. And honestly, it was being like, okay, what would my dad say? Or, okay, you know what? I've got some friends sort of relying on me or kind of looking at me right now. I'm going to do better. And it was definitely really helpful to have a support system behind me.
Right.
But another thing I'm thinking of is maybe not dealing with things in absolutes. Like, I will never do this again. Or starting tomorrow, this is the thing. Like, that's really scary.
Yeah, I say Mondays are where goals go to die.
Exactly.
Like, I'll start Monday. Mondays.
And it can get really, you can get to the point where you're just like, I have failed every Monday for the last 3 months straight. I give up. I'm not doing it. But I burped a little. Anyways.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
It was good. It was good. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking maybe making like micro progressions. Mm-hmm. Like maybe you didn't like go to the gym like you did, but yo, look at you. Like you had water instead of that soda at lunch. Or maybe, yeah, you did go back over to his house, but hey, look, you spent 30 minutes a day writing and you spend another 30 minutes doing something good for yourself. Like you're making small progressions. Like don't be so hard on yourself. You can do it. I believe in you.
You know what? Shay believes in you, and I believe in Shay. So it's just really this system of belief that we're trying to channel your way. And again, it's not to invalidate anyone's experience, because when we are in those kind of dark places, when you're experiencing those really undesirable emotions, it can be really difficult to imagine what that change looks like. It's like those negative energy states that we kind of get attached to. By no fault of our own, but again, still our responsibility to deal with them in one way or another. So I really like that kind of focus on progression instead of kind of that light switch of like on off. I'm either on my diet or I'm not on my diet at all. I'm either with this person and they're my partner forever, or I defriend them from Facebook and never talk to them again.
Or MySpace. Or the worst.
If you're still on MySpace, like, comment, and subscribe.
I look at someone like Micah. I love my mom to death, and she kind of struggles with a relationship.
He's a mama's boy.
Really, she struggles with a relationship with fitness, and she's one of those people that's just like 0 or 7 days a week, an hour and a half every day, 50 minutes of lifting, 50 minutes of cardio. I don't even know if that adds up to an hour and a half, but I think it's 45 and 45. Not important.
Yeah.
Anyways, and she falls off and gets so upset, and then she jumps back on, and she's feeling good. And it's just, if she had this middle ground of maybe progressing slower or just letting herself have smaller wins here and there, I think someone like that would have a more pleasant time coming out of that dark place.
Right. And I just had a thought. Can I just derail maybe just a little bit?
Derail it.
I don't want to. I want to respect the space, but I was thinking like, what is it about like us and our environment that like leads us into those traps of like all or nothing thinking? And I'm like, and I almost like I was just talking about like a light switch, like an on and off, and then I was like, oh my goodness, like no natural forms of light are on or off. That the sun rises and sets gradually. And that's the natural state of things, but we've almost been conditioned by our environment, even by the nature of the light that we consume, that it's on or off.
I didn't think that was going there, but okay, I'm feeling it.
and almost like even that one thing, like the water's either on or off. Like we have these modes that we interact with our environment, like air conditioner on and off, like light on and off, that gives us these expectations. That's how also the things in our body and in our relationships should work, that they should be on or off. And it creates this illusion that it is all or nothing, because that's the way that we've like deconditioned or domesticated our environment to be. But nothing that I can think of off the top of my head in nature is on or off.
There's very few absolutes, even except for like the laws of physics. There's very few absolutes anywhere. I think, if you want me to comment on it, I think that kind of comes with identifying with a thing. It's less about getting better for some people, and it's more about like, I am the guy that this, or I am the woman that does this, and we just have this like all or nothing mentality, and when it's not all or nothing, it's somewhere in between. It gets muddy and confusing, and it's not comfortable. I don't want to. I'm done. I'm not doing it.
I'm done. It's too hold the hand. It's too hard to hold like half of an identity.
Yeah, it is really scary because the other half's like, oh my God, what am I doing right now?
It's filled with like doubt and all those things that, really scary stuff but also like very normal experiences for a human being to feel at some point in their life.
For sure.
Like if you don't feel doubt at least one time in your life, like I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. It's all of this is a very natural cycle. A lot of people go through in a lot of different situations. And if we're talking about a support system being really important, a small support system would be like everybody goes through this. Like everybody struggles with these ideas and these concepts and these addictions and these failures and these getting back on. And you just got to be nice to yourself. You got to realize that it is possible. Just take it one step at a time.
Yeah, be nice to yourself. Show what we call like self-compassion. That whole idea of self-love, which like kind of sounds a little hippie-ish when I say it out loud, but really knowing that you do have value. No one's value is zero. I think if we're kind of listing things off, bullet point style, it's kind of starting not only something progressive, starting with things that you already know. Trust those little basic things that you already know. And I'm trying to remember exactly how that he put it, but starting with home base, right? Always coming back to the foundations was something that really stood out to me as like a good idea for anyone who's either on the wagon, fell off, or never was on the wagon in the first place.
For whatever reason, like this just reminded me of something. I remember in my training, stretching and kind of like mobility and like recovery was like a big, like just a hole in my training.
Yeah.
And me and my friend we were talking about like, man, we got to start stretching. We got to start taking that more seriously. And one time he was just like, we were in line at the grocery store and he just started stretching his leg. He just like pulled his leg up behind him like a quad stretch. And he was like, dude, stretching's never a bad idea. And then I started just stretching a little bit here and there. And it took something that was like, instead of thinking of like, yo, we got to stretch. Like it's time to stretch. He was just like, start stretching like now.
You can just do it.
And then all of a sudden, like, 3-4 years later, it's a habit. I don't even think about it. And it was just like, instead of this all or nothing mentality, it was like, I'm going to stretch in the line at Walmart. And slowly it became a thing. And I just remember that right now.
It's never a bad idea to breathe.
To breathe. That's a good one.
Like deep breathing is something you can do anywhere. It's free. And like, you don't have to like set time aside to meditate in order to like take a few deep breaths. I love that. That's a great idea of kind of weaving that into just your way of being in the world.
Yeah. Pretty good stuff.
Very cool. Well, hopefully we've given you some ideas, a little bit of inspiration. Some of it was us just riffing as we normally do. What are some final thoughts that are going through your mind, Shay, as we kind of wrap things up?
Some final thoughts is you got to have self-love. You got to have a place to respect yourself and to forgive yourself. You are going to fall off. If anything, I guarantee you're going to do it at some point. So you might as well have a good relationship with it. And the first step to take is just identifying where you are and the smallest, easiest win you can make right now. So that might be just drinking some water this morning, or that might be just journaling for 30 minutes as a way to love yourself, or that might just be like, hey, let's go on a walk right now. And that's where it's all going to start, with those little tiny baby micro steps that just kind of show you, look, you're worth forgiving. You're worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, is going back to that idea of value, that, you definitely know things. I bet you know something right now that you could do to improve your health.
Quick, what's 3 times 3? I bet you knew. Hustle and Thrive loves you and believes in you.
This is. I feel like I want to hug a member of my audience right now. Like, if you're one of the 6 people listening to this podcast, imagine us giving you a big ol' hug right now.
Big ol' sweaty hug.
And letting you know that, you can do it. And know that you do have value, and you know things that you could put into practice even tomorrow, I bet, that will, start getting you back on that bandwagon.
Yeah. Well, I think that is about all we have to talk about.
This podcast brought to you by Wagons.
Wagons. Red wagons, wooden wagons, wagon wheels, any of that.
Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail? Oh my God, Oregon Trail. I think they remade that.
Did they?
I think it's
like... Is there a remix?
Maybe.
I still die of dysentery every time.
Every time, dysentery. Anyways, this has been Hustle and Thrive. I'm Shay Perkins, and this is...
Julian Frazier.
And we are out. Have a great day, guys.
Have a good one.